Succession Planning 101. And this is not going to be your standard discussion of succession planning. If you just want to hear the same stuff over and over again, go check out other channels. If you want to take a different view of it and really break open your thinking, that's what we're here for today. Succession planning is largely about what happens if the business is different, right? If the people die, if somebody has to leave management, what happens? How does the business continue going? That is the succession plan. Now, a lot of people and a lot of my fellow lawyers will consider succession planning to just be a will or a trust or something that happens in the event that somebody dies, right? We got to get the ownership interest somewhere. And that's really the starting block of it. But what's bigger than that is really thinking about how do we run a plan? What do we want the future to look like? And there's a lot more here than just legality, ownership, who has control, right? The big thing here when we start doing succession planning 101 is what do we want the future to look like? What is the story, right? And that's something we want to be working on with our family, with our loved ones, with our employees as well. How will we transition, right? Is there a clear person who's going to step up and take over in the event of a succession event, right? If the main owner dies, let's say we have an owner manager who's running the business and he or she dies, is there somebody clearly ready to step up and take that role? Or are we going to have to go outside and hire that? What does that look like? What happens within the family unit? Is the spouse interested in owning, managing, and overseeing the business, either on a day-to-day basis or as a outside, shareholder that's going to keep an eye on it? Or do they even have the knowledge and ability to do that, right? That's another question to be asked. Moving the interest from, spouse one to spouse two in the event one of the spouses die, or moving it to the children, I mean, that's fantastic. That's a start. That gets us out of the box of having, maybe probate issues or fight for control or other things. That's something to be thought about, sure. But it doesn't really fix the core issue of this business needs to keep moving forward. So where I like to start when I really do this is mapping a plan, right? Getting the owners and their family and their management team in different ways and getting them together to discuss. Now, this may all not be one big meeting, and in some cases that would be awkward, right, to have the children and the spouse and the management and everybody all together because there could potentially be conflicting interests. But having these conversations separately and bringing the results together certainly makes a lot of sense, right? What does the business owner want? What do they think is appropriate for their family? Do they think the children could come together and run the business? Do the children have the ability to run the business? Do the children have the interest in running the business? That has become a bigger and bigger challenge over time for myself and others, which is, do the kids even want to be involved? A lot of times these days, the kids just say, hey, get me out of this. I'm not interested in this, right? I want to do something different. I've already got a career. Maybe I have my own business. Maybe I'm not interested in industry. I don't want to go back to my old hometown. Whatever the case might be, there's a lot of reasons why children say, no, get me out of here. And then we have the awkwardness, too, with children of what if one of them wants to step up and run and others don't? Then we have a situation where maybe one gets a bigger inheritance than the others. Maybe the things need to be divided differently. And how do we, if we divide the ownership equally among the children, how do we keep a situation where one kid is effectively working for the other kids, right? Let's say we have 3 children. One of them steps up to run the business. They have 1/3 of the stock. The other kids have the 2/3 of the stock. Well, they may or may not get lawyered up and do their thing, but if they did, that child that owns 1/3 of the business could effectively be in a situation where they're being supervised and answering to the kids that own 2/3 of the business. Now, things can be done with voting arrangements, different classes of stock. There's ways to work around that, but it can get very awkward, and you want to think about it more than just saying, oh, yeah, let's just transfer 1/3 to each kid, and we'll have one kid come up and run it. Not to mention the kid that's running it may want to get a salary or draw for running the business, make it their full-time job, let's say. When the other kids are off working other careers, it's fair that the child working full-time gets something extra for that But what is that amount? And do they have to answer to their siblings about that, right? These are the kind of awkward things that come up. And then from the business management standpoint, do we have a clear manager or person ready to take over the business? Some businesses, like one of my clients, build up a manager, a person that runs the business. And so that person is in there running it day to day. They know how to run the business. They know how to check the boxes. They know how to run the reports. They know how to maintain the inventory. If you've got that kind of person in your business where you're largely hands off and that person is going to potentially stick around for a period of time, then you have a lot different situation, right? Because you have a clear chain of control. You don't have to think about transitioning how the business is run. The business can continue to run even if the ownership changes. In most businesses, that's not the case. In most businesses, we need to do some separate planning for what happens to the business if something changes, right? If somebody's no longer here, what do we do with the business, right? How do we keep it running? How do we manage that, right? That's the story. That's the real succession planning that needs to go on, right? We need to have those conversations. We need to get everybody in the room. We need to talk about what's going to happen. And then we need to figure out how to document and carry that out. Some of that's going to go into LLC agreements or operating documents for the business. And some of it might be into estate planning documents. And now this is where you get a lot of planning opportunities, right? When do these ownership interests change? Do we wait for death? Is there trust involved? Is there ways to do it if the values are significant, where we're talking about a potential taxable estate? Then there's some very advanced strategies that can be done to potentially start transitioning that business into a different generation to avoid some taxes, right? So this is all stuff that can be done on the planning front if done in advance. But what really needs to be done is the business needs to be viewed as a whole, as a continuing, living, breathing entity that is going forward. Everybody needs to put the planning into that. So I hope this gives you kind of a different view of succession planning. It's probably a lot different than the other stuff you've been seeing on the internet. That's something we focus on here on the channel, so you may want to go check out some of our other videos. We got a lot of tips there. If you're a new subscriber, drop me a note, say, hey, I'm new here. Always welcome your comments and suggestions for videos, but if you're commenting, don't put anything confidential. Other people might see your comments. So if you have something private about you and your business, put that in a communication with an attorney where it may get attorney-client privilege. Don't put it here on the internet. But if you have general questions, suggestions for videos, topic ideas, etc., they're always welcome. Drop them below. Look forward to seeing you guys soon.